Have you ever heard that Vikings wore horned helmets, or that Napoleon was comically short? What if I told you that these facts aren't facts at all? That's right, some of the most widely believed pieces of history are nothing more than myths passed down through generations. But why do we believe them? And who's responsible for spreading these falsehoods? History is filled with stories that shape our understanding of the world, but not all of them are accurate. In fact, many of these myths are so convincing that even your history teacher might have repeated them. Like the idea that medieval people thought the earth was flat. Spoiler alert, they didn't. These misconceptions might sound harmless, but they often distort the truth in surprising ways, sometimes even to serve political or cultural agendas. Today, we're diving into 10 of the biggest historical myths you probably still believe. From misunderstood discoveries to fabricated tales that have become cultural icons, we'll separate fact from fiction and uncover the real stories behind the myths. So buckle up. This is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about history. By the end of this, you might just start questioning everything. Ready? Let's get started. Vikings wore horned helmets. Picture this: a Viking warrior charging into battle, fearsome and towering, with a horned helmet gleaming in the sunlight. It's an image that has become synonymous with the Norsemen, featured in countless movies, TV shows, and even school textbooks. But here's the shocking truth: Vikings didn't wear horned helmets at all. Their helmets were designed for practicality, usually made of iron or leather and completely hornless. So where did this myth come from? It traces back to 19th century Europe, when the costume designer Karl Emil Doppler created horned helmets for Wagner's opera Der Ring des Nibelungen. These dramatic, otherworldly designs caught on and became cemented in popular culture. The irony is that real Vikings would likely have scoffed at such impractical headgear. Instead of horns, they relied on strategy, shipbuilding, and sheer determination to conquer. So, the next time you see a Viking Halloween costume, remember it's more fantasy than fact. Napoleon was short. Napoleon syndrome has become shorthand for describing someone overcompensating for a lack of height. But what if I told you Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't short at all? Historical records list him at 5'6" to 5'7", a perfectly average height for a Frenchman of his era. The confusion may have stemmed from British propaganda, which mocked him as Little Boney, to diminish his reputation. Additionally, there was a mix-up between French and British measurement systems. In French feet, Napoleon's height seemed diminutive, but once converted, he was of average stature. Interestingly, his Imperial Guard, an elite group of soldiers, was taller than most, which may have contributed to the illusion of his being shorter. Far from being a small man, Napoleon was larger than life, both in his ambitions and in shaping Europe's history. Medieval people believed the earth was flat. For centuries, we've been told that medieval Europeans thought the earth was flat, living in fear of falling off the edge. But this couldn't be further from the truth. The idea that medieval people believed in a flat earth is itself a myth, perpetuated by writers in the 19th century who wanted to portray the Middle Ages as an era of ignorance. Educated people of the time, including theologians and scholars, widely accepted the Earth's spherical shape. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Ptolemy had proven the Earth's roundness centuries earlier, and this knowledge was preserved and even taught in medieval universities. What's fascinating is how persistent this myth has been, even influencing modern education. The real ignorance, it seems, isn't medieval. It's our misunderstanding of their knowledge. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. Standing over 13,000 miles long, the Great Wall of China is an architectural marvel and a symbol of ancient ingenuity. But contrary to popular belief, it's not visible from space with the naked eye. Why? Because while it's long, the wall is relatively narrow, blending into the natural landscape. The myth that it can be seen from space started as early as the 18th century and gained traction over time. In reality, astronauts have confirmed that other human-made structures, like city lights at night, are far more noticeable from orbit. Still, the Great Wall's real significance lies not in its visibility, but in its purpose: protecting China's northern borders for centuries. This enduring structure may not be as out of this world as the myth suggests, but it remains a testament to human innovation and determination. Salem witches were burned at the stake. The Salem witch trials of 1692 are infamous for their hysteria and injustice, with accusations flying and innocent lives lost. However, one popular image, the burning of witches at the stake, is historically inaccurate. In Salem, none of the accused were burned. Instead, 19 people were hanged, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones. The idea of witches being burned likely comes from European witch hunts, where burning at the stake was a common punishment. In Salem, the methods were different, but the tragedy was no less severe. These events remind us of the dangers of mass paranoia and the importance of due process. The real fire wasn't literal. It was the burning of reason and justice. George Washington had wooden teeth. Imagine George Washington, the iconic first president of the United States, smiling with wooden teeth. This image has become so ingrained in popular culture that it's easy to believe. But the truth is far more complex and a bit unsettling. Washington indeed had terrible dental problems and lost most of his natural teeth by the time he became president. To compensate, he wore dentures, but they weren't made of wood. His dentures were crafted from a mix of materials, including human teeth, animal teeth, ivory, and even lead. Some historians believe the wooden teeth myth originated because the ivory dentures stained and cracked over time, giving them a wood-like appearance. Dental records even reveal that Washington paid enslaved individuals for their teeth, an unsettling reminder of the inequalities of his era. While the image of a smiling Washington with wooden teeth is quirky and memorable, the reality is far more grounded in historical context and highlights the struggles even the most powerful individuals faced. Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake. Let them eat cake." It's a phrase that has echoed through history, symbolizing the arrogance and detachment of the French monarchy. But did Marie Antoinette actually say it? Absolutely not. There's no historical evidence to support this claim. The phrase first appeared in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions, published in 1765, when Antoinette was just 9 years old and living in Austria. Historians believe the quote was falsely attributed to her decades later to make her seem out of touch with the suffering French peasants who were struggling to afford bread. In reality, while Antoinette lived a lavish lifestyle and was disconnected from the hardships of her subjects, there's no evidence she was as callous as the infamous phrase suggests. Ironically, she became a scapegoat for the failings of a crumbling monarchy. Her story serves as a reminder of how propaganda can shape perceptions, often unfairly. The Trojan horse was a real wooden structure, present a hidden passage or a trick played on the city's defenders. What's fascinating is how this story has transcended its mythical roots, becoming to describe hidden threats. While we'll likely never know the true story of Troy, the tale reminds us of the power of storytelling to captivate and endure through the ages. Einstein failed math. Albert Einstein, one of history's greatest minds, is often portrayed as a relatable genius who struggled in school, particularly with math. This myth has persisted for years, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Einstein excelled in mathematics from a young age. By the time he was 12, he was mastering complex calculus problems far ahead of his peers. The myth may have originated from a misinterpretation of Einstein's school records. In the German grading system of the time, a 1 was the best score, and a 6 was the worst, opposite of today's standard in many countries. When people saw his records showing 1s, they assumed he had performed poorly. In reality, Einstein's brilliance in math and physics paved the way for revolutionary theories like general relativity. The myth of Einstein failing math may persist because it makes genius seem more approachable, but the truth is far more inspiring. He wasn't just good at math, he was exceptional. Chameleons change color to blend in. Chameleons are often thought of as nature's masters of disguise, capable of blending into their surroundings at will. While this idea makes for a great story, it's not entirely accurate. Chameleons don't primarily change color for camouflage. Instead, their color-changing ability is mostly about communication, temperature regulation, and emotional expression. For example, a chameleon might turn darker to absorb heat on a cool morning, or display brighter colors to intimidate rivals or attract mates. Specialized cells in their skin, called chromatophores, allow them to manipulate pigments and reflect light in different ways. While some chameleons can blend in with their environment, this is more of a secondary benefit than their main purpose. Understanding the real reason behind this ability makes these creatures even more fascinating than the myth suggests. History is full of surprises, and as we've seen, not everything we think we know is true. Myths like these remind us to question what we're told and dig deeper for the facts. So what other historical truths might actually be fiction? Let's keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts below.